I'm going to see if I can touch my toes standing. Let's see if I can. Everybody seems to be fixated on if they can touch their toes. If you ask somebody how flexible you are, some people will touch their hands on the floor. Some people will just come down to here. So we're talking about hamstrings again. But let's see if we tried to actually do it in a different position, in a long sitting position. I can touch my toes. Interesting, right? Why? Well, that's what we're going to go over today. One of the very many things we're going to go over today. But before I do, I just want to make sure that I give credit to where credit's due. A lot of everything that I'm going over today, I could thank the Functional Movement Systems, FMS, because I did take their course recently, the SFMA, Selective Functional Movement Assessment. And everything that we're going over today is basically from the course. Now, I'm not giving the whole course away. I'm just going over one breakout, which is the multi-segmental flexion breakout, or pattern in this case. So that's kind of where we're heading today, because there's a lot of different possibilities as to what may limit someone to actually go into full range hamstring, touching their toes. And there's a lot of different things that we need to discuss before we say immediately that that person has tight hamstrings. They might not, and you'll see why when we go over all these different, I call them modules. Okay? So, first of all, the criteria for touching the toes standing is you want your fingers to toes. You want to touch your toes. Your feet are together. I think I have that here. Look at your toes. A lot of times people will look up like this because the trainer's talking too much. But you want to keep the eyes on the toes. You want to do a posterior weight shift, which we're going to talk about. We want to have a uniform spine angle. We don't want to be too rounded on one end of the spine in the thoracic and not enough in the lower. We want to be straight. And sacrum angle at 70 degrees. If you have an inclinometer and you want to measure the angle, that's fine. But I'm not going to get too much into that because that's going a little bit beyond the scope of this particular part of the lecture. So if they don't meet the criteria, remove the hips from the equation, which this does, right? Screen down a little bit. So we remove the hips from the equation. We're not weight bearing now. So if they can touch their toes now, it may be stability motor control dysfunction, inability to posterior weight shift. Now the criteria, we're going to go over that in a second. The angle of the sacrum should be at 80 now. Again, if you have an inclinometer, you know how to do that stuff, great. Uniform spinal curve, touch the toes. So I'll talk about if they still can't touch toes in a second. But let's bring this back up. So let's just go over the posterior weight shift. If someone can't touch their toes when they're standing, a lot of times people just don't know how to actually do a posterior weight shift. And that's basically taking the center of gravity, pulling it out, so you're doing a posterior weight shift, and then you come down, and magically you can reach for your toes when you do that. So what is going on? Well, when you shift your weight backwards, it kind of releases the parking brake that the hamstrings kind of tighten up. And when you bring the hips back, they loosen, they don't feel threatened. Because if you're forward like this and your weight's on your toes, you're gonna fall forward. So the hamstrings, in an effort to actually discourage that, it's gonna contract the hamstrings, and that's gonna cause what maybe people think it's tight hamstrings, but it's just all about how somebody moves. We're all about how someone moves. That's what this is about, and that's what the SFMA is all about, and the FMS. So, like it says, if they don't meet criteria, remove hips from the equation. We did, and we were able to touch the toes because we didn't have to deal with that posterior weight shift. If that's all it is, we basically just teach how to do a posterior weight shift. And there's different types of exercises we can do to encourage the posterior weight shift, toe touch progression, which Greg Cook talks about in a lot of his work. And I'm sure some people have seen that. So we do, first of all, we put our feet up on the half foam roll or something similar, and it automatically shifts your weight back. And there's other criteria as well that actually allow you to actually get more motion out of your hip. But let's go back to this. So if they still can't touch their toes when they're in a long sitting position, we have to look at something else. We want to unload the spine. We want to do what we call the active straight leg raise, okay? And that's what this is over here. So supine just simply means lying on your back, for those that don't know. Here's my nose. And we want to see if there's some few things we want to discuss before we talk about the active straight leg raise. We want this leg to be straight, the bottom leg. Even though it's not being tested, it is. If it lifts up, if I have my hand underneath that knee and it lifts up, then we have a hip extension possible issue. But for purposes of this, we're just looking at the up leg right now. It needs to go up to at least 70 degrees, okay, off the ground. The feet are facing north. They're not externally rotated out. They're not like this. The feet are straight when they lift up the leg. And we want to achieve 70 degrees while this leg is down in contact. If they can't achieve the 70 degrees of the active straight leg raise, it may be a stability motor control dysfunction. We heard that earlier. So what if we didn't jump to conclusion and say, oh, they got tight hamstring? What if we gave them a little cueing in terms of not even verbal cueing? I mean, I'm talking about actually cueing them so they actually can contract their abdominal muscles to stabilize the pelvis. And so, actually, when the pelvis is stable, it can actually do the motion we want it to do. So if you attach tubing to the person's hand, so here's the person lying down. I'm going to draw the nose again. All right. Lifting it up, as you can see, it's higher than the other one. And I see this all the time. So basically, you have the tubing attached to a stable object, or the trainer can hold it. And then the person on the ground is actually trying to push that cable down. You want to have equal force though. You don't want to, the arm should not move. You should feel tension though. And when there's tension in the rectus and the muscles and the abdominals, it actually can reorientate the pelvis, and then it can actually bring that leg up. That's working on stability. The pelvis is not going to give you motion if it doesn't feel stable. Why would the body want mobility if it doesn't have stability? And I say this all the time. I learned this from Greg Roskopf. He said if you walk on ice, you walk very slowly. You decrease your stride because you don't want to fall on your face. So you want mobility, but you have to have it preceded with stability. So this is stabilizing the pelvis, and that's, you see, ranges over. So if somebody can't lift their leg up that high, this is the first thing I would do. I was like, give them a lot of exercises that are similar in nature to this, okay? So I'll just read this since I wrote it, because it took me a long time to write all these things. I do all these drawings, by the way, and all this writing myself. It took about an hour to do it today before we started, but that's beside the point. Anyway, if they have anterior tilted pelvis, which we talked about in the last section, this kind of a lordosis or lower cross syndrome, this maneuver, by pulling down that isometric contraction, can recruit the abdominals, thus realigning pelvis in neutral position, which allows for increased range of motion. So, if range of motion doesn't change, then we got to try passive range of motion. So let's do that. I think I'm finally getting the hang of these boards, but watch me screw up it. So, passive range of motion. They can't seem to get the range on their own, but is the range available? The range may be there. It's being hidden because we don't know if passively you have the range. Because if actively you don't, then we got to try passively. If they can achieve 80 degrees now versus 70 degrees. If they can achieve 80 degrees of hip flexion passively, it would be, again, a stability motor control dysfunction. And think of that resistance band we just talked about before. So they're not able to get it, but we can get it when we can access that range when passively we're doing it. Passively is just basically someone else is moving you, maybe even a towel. But we don't want to be relying on somebody always stretching us. We want our muscles to actually do the work so we can get the motion and gets the stability that we need. Think again that exercise I just showed you about the tubing. So if they still can't achieve 80 degrees passively, we need to distinguish if it's soft tissue restriction, which is hamstring and posterior chain musculature, tightness there, could be fascial tightness, which would see maybe a person that does Graston technique or a physical therapist, chiropractor, just to loosen things up in there. Or the restriction could come from the hip. So we're still trying to figure out whether or not it's a hamstring or something else. So let's see if I can get this right. So if it's a hip restriction, I drew this wrong and I didn't erase it. I'm gonna erase it here. Both legs need to be up. So we're basically in this position, lying on our back. And we're trying to see if we can achieve 120 degrees of hip flexion when we're lying on our back. The criteria is must be able to achieve 120 degrees hip flexion, which this person looks like they're doing it. Sacrum, low back stays in contact with the floor, and the knees stay together. Sometimes the knees will spread out. That tells us that something's going on in the hip. If something is going on in the hip, if they can't get to 120, then probably have to maybe refer to a qualified health practitioner, whether it be an orthopod or a person like a physical therapist. But if they can, well, let me back up. Sometimes you can get more motion in the hip just by doing some mobility bands. You attach the band, I don't know if you can see this, where you have the person like this, and you have the band pulling this way and backwards just to get some motion in the hip. I'll maybe show it sometime during this lecture, maybe right now. We can see it. So anyway, that's one of the things. So if they are able to get 120 degrees, then we can say they can flex their hips to 120 degrees while meeting criteria. They have a posterior chain hamstring tightness. Look at all the things we had to go through to determine whether it was indeed hamstring issue. We went through a lot of stuff. So I would recommend stretching for the phasic muscle, which we talked about very earlier in a lot of these hamstring discussions, by doing a PNF style stretch, which we'll go over that in the next portion of this lecture. But basically that's what I wanted to talk about today. Hope I didn't lose too many people. I hope people can go away with something that they can use in their practice, possibly, or in their training business. I appreciate you watching. Gary, touch your toes. Can you reach? That's about it, huh?
A little tough today.
Okay. So now we're going to do some PNF, which is going to introduce successive induction, which is one of the concepts that we're going to introduce. We're also going to introduce reciprocal inhibition, which is when you push into me, you're gonna contract the abdominals and the hip flexors, so it actually shuts off the posterior chain muscles to give you more motion. And irradiation is when the muscles, when the weak muscles are being helped by the stronger ones. So it's a diagonal pattern. The diagonal pattern allows us to actually take advantage of that irradiation principle, which by going in by a diagonal direction, you're actually working a lot more muscles. The muscles that are strong are helping the weak, which in this case, a lot of times, hip flexors and the abdominals. So that's where we're going on this, okay? So what I want you to do as we practice, I want you to push into my hands, come towards your right knee, come as far as you can. I'm giving them resistance. Give me as much resistance as you can. Now we're gonna hold that. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Now go the other way. This is successive induction. You can help motion one way by going the opposite way. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Now come down on the diagonal pattern. Come down, come down, come down. Reach, 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 reach. Go far as you can, Gary. Go far as you can. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Now go the other way. All the way. Go back as far as you can. As far as you can. Hold that. Now come down. One more time. Push, 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 push. Good. Now let's try to see how if that. Keep the back straight. Reach for the toes. Yeah, better. That's better. That's how I do PNF versus lie on your back. This leg straight. You see people doing this. And what you're going to do is, what most people do is say, Gary, I want you to push down on my hands. Push down to straighten the leg. Keep the knee straight. This is what's being marketed as PNF on the internet. It's straight plane, it's not moving in diagonal planes, and it's not taking advantage of those three concepts that I introduced: successive induction, reciprocal inhibition, and irradiation, okay? But if you're gonna bastardize PNF, let's strengthen the hip flexor. Is the hip flexor weak, or is the hamstring tight? Yes. So let's get stronger in the hip. So I would rather, if you're gonna do it this way, I'd rather have him, I give mine slow resistance. Push up, pull that leg up. See, he doesn't have much strength there, so you gotta give him just more what they call tracking resistance. If we're gonna do straight plane, I'd rather do that. I'd rather work on his hip flexors than actually pushing down. When he pushes down, go ahead, push down. When he pushes down like that, that's firing the Golgi tendon organ, okay? Because increased tension to a higher threshold will shut the muscle down as a protective mechanism, as we talked about in other lectures. So by going this way, we're doing reciprocal inhibition. Go pull up again, pull up, and then we can get a little high. Yeah, it may not be as immediate, the range, but it probably will last longer because we want to have a strong hip flexor to be able to see that hamstring explore that new range. It's important. So I prefer the first method that we did, and that's my take on PNF. Okay, we've reached the point where we're actually going over a stretch for the hamstrings, or if somebody can't touch their toes, this is a good little trick I learned from Gray Cook from FMS. Hopefully I'm not butchering it too much. But anyway, it's a way to actually, it's a pattern of flexion pattern. And we're looking at a lot of different things. And we have a lot of strategies. But first we're gonna just put his feet up on the foam. Yep. And he wants his feet to be kissing each other, really tight. If he's up too high, you might want to adjust it so you don't fall all the way out. We got the table here in case he loses balance. Okay. So this is kind of like giving him a posterior weight shift a little bit at this position, which we're going to be talking about more and more during these lectures. And that helps a lot in terms of shutting off hamstrings. Okay, that's one of the things. So we're going to put this in between. You're going to spread his knees. You're going to put it in there nice and tight so it doesn't get in the way. All right, I'm going to ask him to squeeze that when he reaches barriers. What that does, it can actually turn on the adductors, the muscles in the inner thigh, which are connected to the pelvic floor, which actually turn on, and the muscles in the posterior chain can shut off. Reciprocal inhibition, we talked about it before. Okay? So, we're going to have Gary's arms raised up above his head. Whenever his arms are up here, he wants to actually breathe in. Okay? The other thing he wants, I'm going to move a little time here. He wants his chest, if there was a beam, it would be going forward. His hips, we don't want the hips, if there was a beam of light, we wouldn't want it to shine down here. We want to level his pelvis without arching his back. Yeah, there you go. Go the other way just to show the audience. There you go. So he's got more of a, yeah, see that? That's perfect. Now just go in the middle. So he's got a level pelvis. We want to start there. Reaching high as he can. We'll throw him off balance a little bit. He has to use his core muscles to stabilize. Again, what good is getting mobility if you can't stabilize? Now come down like you're leaning a wall and come down and just touch as much as you can. Good. Now come back up. Breathe in. Arms above, high as you can. And now reach again. Bring the arms down. Let's go over that again, Gary. Let's go over there. So when you're up here, you're just coming down like this and coming down. Yeah. Good. So I'm going to do it one more time. Breathe in, breathe out. So he's not reaching any barriers really. He's pretty good at this. But let's just make believe he's a real tight client or doesn't have good awareness of his body. So up above. So I want you to just come down and just only go to your knees. We'll see. I've seen people this tight. So what I do is I have them squeeze the towel. Squeeze as much as you can. That's a barrier right there. Now try to see if you can go a little further. And usually people do get a little bit more range there. And now breathe in as you come up, arms above the head. And again, do the pain, come down, straighten the arms all the way now, and reach for the toes. And now I'm going to have you hang out there and do some breath. You're looking at the actual towel. You want to have a nice rounded spine here. You don't want to be looking at me. Hold that, squeeze and breathe. Give me some good breaths because it actually allows the central nervous system to say, hey, I can shut off this parking brake on the hamstring. I'm going to just relax. It's okay down here. In other words, by breathing down there. Okay, so come back up again. And one more time. Breathe in up there. Reach as high as you can. Again, it's making an unstable position. He almost wants to fall forward. His core has to work. Reach down. And hold it. Give me a couple of breaths down there, guys. Keep looking at the towel. How's that feel?
It's good.
All right, that's one half of the drill.
Definitely feel a stretch.
You feel the stretch?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so now I'm going to take this out. And now we're going to just reverse. We're going to go on this side so that people can see a little bit. Actually, we're going to have you come over here, Gary, so you get a front view.
I got you.
So people can see that your heels are on there now.
Mm-hmm.
So by his feet together, it actually keeps him from going into pronation. And he's squeezing this as hard as he can. Keeps everything in alignment here. Yeah, find that spot.
It's okay.
His feet are touching. That's important. Heels as well. Get the heel. Yeah, there you go. We're going to do the same thing. Good. Watch the window pane. Straighten out before you actually bend. Go up again. Go up again. Up two. Watch again. So this is straighten out. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
You're gonna before you even bend, you want your arms down straight.
Right.
Okay. So you just watch the window pane. And now you go good. Reach. Now some people may not be able to do that again. Come back up. He's doing a great job. Up again. Up. Nice deep breath in. And if they can't, let's say we'll go down a little bit. Let's say you can't go down. Just go down to where your hands reach the towel. All right, so now I would tell them, bend your knees if you have to, but not more than you need to. I want you to touch your toes. I want your nervous system to say, it's okay down here to touch the toes. Bend the knees as much as you have to, but not more than you need to. Come back up. I like the way you're looking at the towel. You're doing a great job. Again, go up. Again, we're doing this to actually kind of release the parking brake in the posterior chain, stretching out the whole posterior chain, especially on the first one, when we had the toes up, we're getting a lot of the gastroc soleus muscles in the back of the leg. I should have
That's
next
right.
year. And I'll come back up. So again, let's just review. That's good, Gary. So by doing the toe touch progression, it's giving you a posterior weight shift, especially when you're like this. It forces your hips to go behind you and teaches you how to actually move better. And when your arms are up high, it actually challenges your balance again because you want to fall backwards. So you're actually getting that core activation so you don't fall. And then when you when you're squeezing the band with your feet together, you're squeezing the towel, it actually kind of, and you're holding it down here, you kind of release that parking brake. Because you could do a lot of exercises, touching your toes, this kind of thing, where you're reaching, but it doesn't have a lot of carryover because it's not like, think of it like trying to save a document. If you don't hit save, you lose everything. Same with this. This is teaching you the pattern, and it's teaching you a lot of, it's integrating a lot of the core visual cues, way to look, and just a lot of stability requirements to do this particular exercise versus just putting your leg up or reaching for your toes like we did in the beginning of the videos. All right, so that's the toe touch progression. I hope you enjoyed the videos.